Hello. Dogs, neighbors, and assholes. I know, kind of an interesting topic. Um, Dogs have been called man's best friend, I guess, for a good reason. Um, they're, absolutely the most loyal companion you can have, probably short of a good spouse. And I myself, for the majority of my life, I was a cat person. Still am. Love cats. I've always loved cats. Um, uh, House cats. I've always had a cat my entire life. In fact, right now, I don't have a cat at home. I have a cat at the office. But throughout my entire life, I've always had a cat. Now, as far as, I guess this isn't about cats, so is it? Uh, Dogs. I guess I became a fan of a dog um, when somebody drugged this rat little white bastard Chihuahua home as a baby. Of course, nobody asked me anymore if they could get a dog because they knew my answer was no, I don't want no more dogs. For Christ's sake, you got 2, 3 dogs already. What do you need any more for? But I don't know. You're probably, how old are you, Mila? You're gonna go somewhere. All right. She's probably closing on 6, I suppose, and got her as a puppy. But she was supposed to be my daughter's dog, but yeah, as that works out, that wasn't Mila's choice. Mila decided she liked me, and there's no getting away from it. I had no choice. The dog was now my dog. When I would come home, the dog was on my lap. I say the dog. Mila was on my lap constantly. That's where she wanted to be. And yeah, you can't help but grow to love that. And I could honestly say that, I've had a lot of pets in my life, mainly cats, obviously. But Mila is one of the most special animals I've ever had. And Zoe is actually probably a better dog if you're going to evaluate dogs on dogness. Zoe is the perfect dog. She likes everybody. She is very smart. Just today, and I spoil my dogs. I'll tell you that right out. I had BLTs, and you guys quit whining. We're not gonna have no food now. Stop. So when I was done with my BLT, of course, there was plenty of pieces of bacon left, and of course, the dogs beg till at some point where they get, a couple pieces of bacon. And, is that good for them? I don't know, I guess. I don't really care because they love it. They enjoy it. Okay, Mila, come here. Quit your whining and come here. My goodness, God. So, anyway, oh, you two, stop. So, what does that have to do with neighbors? Well, this is part of my Ask a Filipino. And I'm going to talk about dogs in the Philippines. If you go over to the Philippines, there's dogs absolutely everywhere, as there's cats absolutely everywhere. But the dogs are a little more easy to notice because they're out and about a little bit more. And why is that? I guess because nobody is neutered or spayed, so they just kind of run around and there's just a lot of dogs that get bred and have puppies and are around. I remembered it was on one of my trips over there, and I was waiting for this to happen, but it eventually did happen. We were taking a taxi cab drive down to watch the whales in one of the bays. I actually swim with the whales. And the taxi cab drivers, they just drive crazily. And all of a sudden, there was a car right in front of us, and apparently a dog had run out onto the road, and this car hit that dog, and all we really heard was the yip of the dog, and kind of saw it roll, and I'm sure that was the end of that dog. And, you know, that kind of stuff, you know, puts a lump in my stomach, quite honestly. But, you know, there isn't much you can do about it. It's just, you know, a dog got out into traffic, got run over. I have no idea if it was somebody's dog, a stray dog, or what it was, but, you know, that type of thing makes me feel bad. You know, what really this video is about is, you know, my girlfriend Hannah, who has her family, they have 3 dogs. And 2 males, 1 female. Now, the males are tied up, but Valentina, the female, can kind of run loose. And apparently she doesn't like the 2 dogs that are there at home, but she did venture off and found a different mate and got pregnant. And she did have some puppies quite a while ago, you know. This is 8-9 months ago, but they were stillborn and nobody lived, and it was kind of an aborted situation. But more recently, about 3 months ago, she had given birth to 6 puppies. Now, okay, so you got a family of 3 dogs and you've got 6 puppies, okay. But nonetheless, you know, puppies are puppies, cute, lovable, everything else. And so they were growing up, doing well, and of the 6, eventually they had found homes for 4. And, you know, so it was down to two puppies, and they're 3 months old. Now, inevitably, you know, here's the part about neighbors. You know, we've all had neighbors that, good neighbors, bad neighbors, you know, ones that we get along with, ones we don't. But ultimately, you know, you have to learn to live with each other, obviously, for neighbors. And in this case, we're talking close neighbors. Now, these puppies, the 2 that were left, you know, they had collars on. They knew where their home. They were fed well. They were taken care of very well. But they did have the ability to get outside and to, you know, wander, you know, up and down the alley or the street a little bit. And unfortunately, they had the ability to get over to the neighbors. And here's the part where the asshole part comes in. You know, the 2 male dogs that are there, you know, they're loud, honestly. Lucky and Paul. I hear them constantly, and I'm 8,000 miles away, and it's like, oh my God, that dog barks. So, you know, you sense, you know, possibly the frustration of a neighbor who's dealing with, you know, a few dogs that are loud and barking because, you know, it don't take much to get a dog to bark. I've got 2 dogs, and any little noise that's out of the ordinary, and they're barking. You know, see, there we are, out of the ordinary, barking. So, okay. So apparently the thought process was there that, you know, we just don't want more dogs. We got too many already. And it started with the one little girl dog named Bella. And, you know, we'd wander over there and came home, and they had kind of noticed that they'd gotten some food from the neighbor, and this was like on a Sunday. And by Monday, the dog was sick, throwing up, not doing very well. Tuesday, gotten worse, pretty much down and out, really not taking anything. And by Wednesday morning was dead. So you're like, okay, what happened here? We're talking, yeah, come here, come on. We're talking in perfectly good shape on Sunday and dead Wednesday morning. Oh, thank you. I didn't want to say much, but I'm thinking, oh my goodness, sounds like, the dog, might have gotten into something that it shouldn't have. So you got something kind of carrying in the back of the mind that it was over at the neighbors eating food, or was given, a fish carcass or something, and the next thing you know, it's sick and pretty much died a few days later from internal issues. Okay, so you kind of chalked it up, remember it, whatever. And here you are, literally a week later, less than a week later. You got one puppy left of the 6 because the other 4 were given away to homes. And, that dog kind of wandered off over to the neighbors and noticed came back with some fish or a carcass of a fish from the neighbor. And lo and behold, same thing, the next day it's thrown up, can't keep anything down. And, ultimately, within another day, that dog passed. That was just yesterday. So, take a genius to start connecting the dots here. Poison is poison, in whatever form you may want to give it to an animal. So, what do you do? I don't always have a good answer for that. This particular neighbor person doesn't have dogs, has a few chickens, roosters. And quite frankly, they aren't quiet either. I hear them. But, going over there and giving some tainted food to the rooster so the rooster dies, there's no emotional attachment to this chicken, for Christ's sake. This chicken is raised to cockfight. So, it's going to meet its fate in a whole different manner that's probably equally as horrible as a dog dying from being poisoned. So, to poison this guy's roosters, yeah, there's a financial loss, I suppose, but there's no emotional loss. And really that's what this is about. Dogs are pets. Chickens are not pets. They're raised for meat, and in this case they're raised to fight, which is probably even a little bit more ridiculous. But nonetheless, the old eye for eye, I guess, really doesn't apply in this case because there's not a lot you can really do. You're not going to make this person feel bad because you poisoned his chickens. He'll feel a slight financial loss, but what the hell? That's you're not going to cry over that. So what do you do? There isn't a lot probably you can do. This is where it gets down to integrity of people, especially neighbors, people that you've lived by and or around for, a good majority of your life. For me, personally, I tend to seclude myself from neighbors. I live on 40 acres. I don't really have to worry about close neighbors. And it's for that exact reason. Because, yeah, you can have good neighbors, but ultimately, you're going to do something to, piss them off. Whether it's occasional music, fireworks show. In this case, loud, too many dogs, barking dogs, what have you. And when somebody takes matters into their own hands, the situation can escalate out of control. There is, possibly an avenue here. There's, the Philippines is an interesting place. I should have probably put this, maybe I will put this in the title too, squatters. There's a good percentage of the population of the Philippines that are called squatters. Now, the reason being, I guess, is because they'll build a house on land that's technically not theirs. Now, a lot of this land is public land or land that isn't being used, in areas where, they just kind of take it over, build a makeshift house, if you will. But ultimately it's where they live. It's still called squatting because they don't have title to the property they're on. And this particular person, it might be the situation. I'm not really sure. But there's an old school that's right across the road, or right across the street, with just literally 15 feet out the front door of where Hannah lives. On the other, just directly across from him. And, it was always their father telling them that, hey, that you need to do some work or some homework on the property and the property lines and the title and who owns what here, because it was his belief that property was part of the parcel that their family owned. But, time goes by, things happen, nobody's too concerned about it because you're living in harmony, with your neighbors. But this situation, I guess, has forced, or maybe me more than anybody, to say, hey, you need to go down and check out what the situation is with, the land and your land, your neighbor's land, the school land, and kind of find out how that's titled, where the property boundaries are, and who's living on what land, and whose land is whose, really. We refer to the Philippines as a developing nation, but they have laws, they have property, they have descriptions and ownership of every parcel of land, no different than in the United States. Now, it may not be quite as detailed, or the information is maybe a little bit harder to come by, but nonetheless the information is there and certainly obtainable. So, rather than the eye for an eye, I'm encouraging, to go down and research the property and find out who's living on whose property, whether he actually has title of the property he's living on, or whether he's just squatting on it and it's actually a tax delinquent or a public property, or, gosh, even better yet, property that her family owns. So that is what I want to encourage. There was nothing that would make me feel better than to see this asshole just totally evicted and his house, literally burned to the ground because he doesn't deserve anything better than that. The mannerisms of the Filipino culture is to be very passive about stuff like this. In the United States, if you had any inclination that somebody had poisoned your dog and was giving them tainted meat because they just were tired of you having too many dogs, and they're going to take it upon themselves to eradicate your dogs, you'd be just freaking furious. At least I would be. But over there, they kind of, okay, don't want to really cause waves, the guy even had the audacity to say, well, maybe it got into, some poison, and if you give it water with sugar, that, might help save it. So it's almost like a criminal returning to the scene of the crime. You want credit for what you did, but you don't want to out and out admit that you were the culprit. To me, that's probably the most chicken shit way of dealing with something that anybody could ever come up with. But nonetheless, that is the approach that this person took. So, now, you're going to deal with the wrath of an angry American. Because, what prevents somebody from doing anything really is just no resources to do anything. It's like, well, that's all great and fine, but, I don't have any money or any resources to dedicate towards trying to figure out what's happening, who owns what, and it isn't like it would, cost a lot of money, but the fact that it costs any money is really the issue. So, I guess everybody needs a little drama in their life. For me, I guess I have a little drama in my life. 8,000 miles away, but nonetheless a little drama. But what hurts me the most is the fact that you can see the pain in the family's eyes, just because these are animals that they cared for and integrated into their family, and to have them just eradicated in such a such in this behavior is just I don't even have words for it, honestly. And anybody who has pets, dogs, certainly would understand that it's just a heinous thing to do. And karma has a way of taking care of the situation. But I'm going to light a match under karma. So sometimes karma needs a catalyst. Speed it up a bit, make things happen. So, anyway, I guess that's my rant here about, ask a Filipino. But anyway, I hope all you dog lovers out there understand. And anyway, take care.